So yeah, I'm Cevat Yerli, and I'm going to talk today about building integrity in virtual worlds. Why are we investing in virtual reality? Because we believe this time around, unlike the previous trials, VR is here to stay. And it will transform the way we will experience all kinds of new media. Transformation of the way we experience, whether it's linear content, interactive, training, education, all the media will be transformed into new media experiences. We also are looking at virtual reality because we always have been operating at the bleeding edge. Since the beginning of Crytek, we always tried to push the boundaries of graphics, of interaction quality, whether this is physics or AI. It's been always about immersion and pushing the technology to be bleeding edge is today also about VR. VR is bleeding edge. And so it maps perfectly to our company culture and also to our focus of the company. So Crytek and CryEngine always have been about building highly immersive worlds. Since about 15 years ago when we started, we always built tools and technology to provide you the most immersive experiences possible. By creating the world, for example, as you see in real time, as you formed the world, you would be experiencing the interaction immediately at a button click. And which allowed to amount of iterations, which allowed to more richer worlds. And technologies that are about worlds first, when you look at CryEngine, was key to providing immersion. What I mean with that is we didn't create really technology around levels or around corridors. Our technology was about immersion first and foremost. So since the beginning of, for example, Far Cry, we built wide and detailed, expansive worlds, and we pushed it even further with Crysis. Yeah, for those who don't know, we built Crysis and Far Cry in the past as well. And so we have been always about immersion and pushing these boundaries. And in a way, when we look at VR, VR really is about that, at the essence of it. Before we can create content, there's certain technical hurdles to be taken. The most low-level technical hurdles are between frame rate, latency, and resolution. Now, I'm not going to go into the science of it. Others will do. But I will keep a very high level on this topic since I have about 19 more minutes to go. First is on frame rate. It is unthinkable to imagine in the 90s that we would be running highly immersive worlds at high frame rates. The computation power just wasn't there yet. So maybe it was possible to do something like 10 to 15 frames per second at a certain amount of 3D quality, or 2.5D quality in the 90s. But what you really need is at least 60 frames interpolated, or native 90, or even better, native 120 frames per second. And that's per eye, per left eye and right eye. And so anything else that is lower than that will result in a substandard quality of experience. The latency is kind of directly linked to that frame rate, but it is a problem before the frame rate comes in play. So you may have 60 frames per second interpolate to 120 FPS, but your latency should be ideally even faster than that, or lower than that. As in, it should run at a higher frame rate. Because you want to make sure, if you want to achieve presence, or overcome the technical barriers to achieve presence, you want to achieve the amount of latency in your headset that provides immediate response to every micromillimeter of movement. The resolution is the topic that has been part of some discussions and keynotes, but I think it needs to be emphasized that resolution is probably one of the most important things in technical hurdles. Again, with Crytek and our games, we always have been advocating about higher res graphics, not just better graphics, but higher resolution. Not just resolution in terms of screen resolution, but also higher resolution assets as well. So overall resolution across all the aspects are very important for VR. And like we launched just recently, last October, we launched Ryzen 4K running at 30 FPS. Now imagine you need to run Rise in VR with all the heavy graphics that we push on the PC. Imagine we have to run 4K per eye in 120 FPS. You can imagine what it will take from compute power perspective. But it's important to achieve immersion. When we look at film, obviously we went from black and white to color to SD to HD to IMAX and full 3D. It's because we want to increase the immersion, and resolution is part of the equation here. Other rendering hurdles or technical hurdles are especially looked at rendering are stereoscopic 3D, physical base shading, and volumetric lighting. Now, these are not really hurdles per se. I mean, you can get along without all of these. Without stereoscopic 3D, you can't really get along, but you could work without physical base shading or without volumetric lighting. But I'm going to talk about why I believe it's particularly important this time around. First, I mean, for stereo 3D, doing right stereo 3D is a science in itself. But if you did stereoscopic 3D before VR, you took care of things like depth conflicts or the right depth sorting and, of course, the eye distance and pupil distance and all that. Again, I don't want to go too much technical about this, but it was a very intricate process of getting things right and making 3D, stereoscopic 3D feel painless. Yeah. Our mandate when we worked on the first 3D game of Crytek, which was Crysis 2 in the year 2011, we started building stereoscopic 3D technology in around 2008. And the mandate was, don't hurt the player. It's easier than you imagine to hurt the eyes of a player. In stereoscopic 3D, that's a challenge. Now imagine how it is in VR. It's just more profound and more exaggerated. So the better you deal with stereoscopic 3D, the better the foundation for VR experience will be. Physically based shading is something that I feel is very important in VR. We introduced PBS rendering, again, in around 2011, 5 years ago, but it didn't matter as much. Now, in the last game, Rise, we achieved realistic surfaces and whatnot, but still we're looking at a screen. If you look at a screen, PBS rendering is beautiful as images, as moving images. But in VR, again, you are close to surfaces. They are next to you. You're gazing at them at a much more realistic way. And that, not only that you look at them, you actually expect them to behave in a certain way, and you want to touch them. And so all of that creates a more emotional reasoning for physical based shading. So I think, again, all these technologies get more amplified in requirement now. And lighting used to be, of course, about, again, when we look at history of gaming, you went from basic lighting to light maps and to more complex reduced light maps or global illumination baking and into real-time versions of these things, of real-time global illumination. And if you looked at the last 10 years, how lighting evolved, again, it was all about the screen itself. And how do you do lighting that makes you believe you are actually seeing a more realistic experience? But when it's about VR, lighting that gets so often faked for a screen experience, the fake doesn't work in the VR experience anymore. Because every micromillimeter you move your head, your brain expects lighting to behave in a certain view-dependent way. And so creating lighting in a correct way, in a volumetric way, in a real-time way, is now more important than ever before. The eyes will perceive the fakes that we didn't perceive in image-based lighting, in VR, even much more than before. So whilst the technology will make us present in the world, it's going to be the content which will achieve the suspension of disbelief. If you think about books and games and all that, kind of previous experiences, pre-VR, I think it took for many users, some faster than some others, but it took generally for a user a while till he could actually suspend his disbelief. Because it took a while till you got into the story. It took a while till your brain started to form pictures in your mind about the experience. It interpolated the words, or the game experience, the characters and the world became believable over time to you, where you forgot you're playing a game. Now in VR, the moment you surpass the technical barrier, you are in VR. You achieve presence almost instantly. So at that point, it's a job to maintain that state of mind. And the state of mind to maintain the suspension of disbelief at that point is that we have to make you fall in love with what's around you at this point to keep you in that state. So technology will put us as a tool, as an instrument, will provide us the ability to put you instantly into presence. And then it's the content to keep you in that state. Let's talk about making you fall in love with content. So let's say we want to build a very simplistic form of content for now, just a beautiful jungle, again, in the interest of time. So there will be a form of terrain, there will be foliage and some lighting. The terrain, we expected the terrain that, as far as the eye can see, to be somewhat realistic. So we need the tools to make sure we can create fast, easy, and plausible, realistic terrains that we have seen somewhere, but we can't figure out exactly where, but it looks exciting to look at. So it needs to have an emotional content, and from a creation perspective, it has to feature the right ups and downs, as well as the variety. The foliage, in French they say foliage. I'm not French. The foliage. So we paid particular interest or attention to the foliage in Crisis in 2007. Between 2004 and 2007, we built realistically, physically correct behaving foliage. What I mean with that is foliage that when you walk through, it would bend around. And when an AI shot through with his guns, you would see where the bullets come from. And if you throw a grenade to the trees, it would explode and the trees would fall around and all that. Yeah, and smoke would bend around the foliage, etc. Why do we do this? Why did we do that back then? Again, it was about immersion. We wanted you to feel the world around you. We could, of course, just take it as much as we can take it on a screen. But in VR, this is even more important than ever before. Because, again, the desire to touch the world with your body and with your foot and with your hands is now much more profound than it is on a screen. And, of course, lighting plays an emotional role in VR as much as it plays an artistic and storytelling role. Again, it allows us to believe and to get in love with certain objects. I think the lighting has now a certain amount of responsibility that's beyond the screen. So it's not just about, hey, look here, look there, or it's dramatic, it's spooky now. It's really about to highlight beauty and highlight the, again, empathy or any emotional reaction you want to amplify. The raw of order of the experiences. So when you create the world, you start usually trying by creating the terrain, then the foliage and the light. But the experience is kind of the other way around. Yeah, you go from, you experience the light, because that's what you see. The eye sees that lights. I look all the time at the light, but it hurts me, so I look at you again. So light guides us, right? And then we see the objects that are surrounding us. So in, again, simplified terms, the foliage or the objects around us. And then really it's about the vista, the distance. And we have paid intricate detail in the technologies and tools to make sure the world creation process is flexible, but the interaction between all the parts of world, foliage, and lighting is highly integral and provide a very harmonic experience that you can sense it in the right raw of order. And the raw of order that makes it correct and perceivably correct for the brain. We also know that like visuals in the world is not enough to make you fall in love with content. So beauty is more than just skin deep here. There are more aspects to it, of course, such as AI, characters and their interaction, the animation, physics, sound, but also when you look at AI characters, particularly the eye contact, the eye tracking. We have paid a lot of, again, emphasis on how we built these technologies out back in the days from the beginning of the engine. And I don't want to brag or point out the engine, but I keep coming back to this for a reason, because again, AI typically is a technology you add next to the, like you look at it as a module, but we looked at AI as an integral part of the engine, of the world, I should say better, as in like encoding intelligence points into the world, such as what we call smart objects. That allows the AI to traverse the world in a more believable way. And for us as an end-user experience, it will become more plausible as a world. And same as with characters, how they eye track, not just the player's eye contact, but if something happens around them, they will peek at the object and then peek back at you, saying, I noticed what you have been doing. And all these little technologies are, again, highly integrated to provide a more immersive experience. An experience, ultimately, to increase the immersion and also the believability of what's happening around you and what is being told around you or experienced around you. Characters have to look real and behave real. What we have done in for example, in Rise, these two characters are out of our last game, Rise. We performance captured the characters just the same as technology as Avatar did back then, and for the movie. We performance captured to create the lifelike emotional experience. Every single nuances on the faces you could see. Every single emotional feedback you caused, you could see on the characters. Now again, this is on a screen. In VR, this technology has so much more profound experience because a character that behaves correctly to you and says something just by looking at you and a glimpse, like just squeezing the eyes at you, without any saying, but provide, again, the suspension of disbelief higher than ever before. Storytelling is, to some degree, very flat in a game. It's a 2D experience. It's a 2D experience in a 3D world. I think if you start telling stories through the means of characters, through the means of AI, even through the means of physics, and through the means of, after the means of solving the technical problems, we can achieve a more volumetric storytelling. So like all great forms of entertainment, VR will live and die on how much people want to return to it. I think previous speeches said that 2016 we should be not expecting a lot. I think that's correct because the technical barriers and the technical requirements to do what I talk about is provided today as a starting point. Yeah? So by the content and the form of entertainment we provide, we can, of course, make sure that VR will live on. And to make this happen, we need also not to create just believable world, as I said, but also provide deeply personal story experiences that makes the player come back and always create his personal story fix. So to summarize the 3 core ingredients, you need to build an immersive VR experiences. You need to overcome the technical barrier, which is the frame rate. Again, 60, 90, 120 FPS. 60 interpolation to 120 works, but your brain figures out that you're actually faking it over time. If you do 120, your brain will not figure it out. It's just like a slower, it just prolongs the life of your vomit time point. So frame rate, latency, and certain high resolution. Of course, we can talk about 12K per eye, 24K per eye, but this won't happen in the next decade, I would think. But we can have 2K per eye in a meaningful way soon, at 90 frames per second, at these kind of quality bars that I've shown to you from images that can create amazing experiences. We have to build the believable world, which is not just highly immersive, but again, it's emotional. It needs to want to come back. It needs to make you remember in beauty and in emotion, or it has to make you fall in love with it. And then the story, the emotional content that needs to ensure the players are engaged in truly moving stories, in truly moving characters, relatable characters. Again, that makes virtual reality as amazing as actual reality. So the more power you have, the way I see that is, the more power you have, the more headroom there is for your creativity. Our belief is that by using the power of CryEngine to nail this fundamental aspect, we give ourselves more room for creativity and a framework in which storytelling feels even more immersive. So our engine provides you the necessary power at the high frame rates and today's computation power to create the most compelling worlds. Here's an example of that. Should be.
Peggy 12.
Robin, your friend has led us into a bit of a situation. Are you ready to play a little game? Okay. The name of the game is Let's Not Get Squashed. 2 simple rules. Follow me closely and do as I say. Got it? Now the game begins. Stop. Bear left. Through we go. That was close. Stop. Robin, are you ready for a different game?
Achieved with CryEngine.
Well, PowerPoint has problem to run 90 FPS, as you can imagine. So, well, I hope I could cover the basic needs of VR from Crytek's perspective, and I hope you have a chance to check out the demos. We have a few real-time demos around the corner, right behind this wall. And I hope that you will agree with what I said about technology, and if not, feel free to shout at me or ask me questions now, or get in touch with me generally. Thank you very much. I guess no questions, huh? Yeah.
How long did you say that Robinson was in development for the PlayStation VR?
Oh, that is a very blurry line. If you ask me forever, but if I think maybe, effectively you could say maybe about a year and a half, roughly.
The
PlayStation VR was running at 90 frames per second.
Actually, it's 60, 120.
It's 60, 120? Okay.
Yeah.
And was that demo representative of what the PlayStation looks like when you're...
Yeah, you will pretty much get that same quality or better in the game in Robinson.
That's beautiful work, of course.
Thank you.
Amazing. So the focus of Crytek is obviously on realistic, everything that you talked about in your talk, with lighting and everything being just right, so that it's a believable world.
Yeah.
Have you thought about applying those same concepts to non-photorealistic?
Yes, there's a number of projects of partners actually that are looking more of cartoony worlds. But even in the animation space, for example, there's a lot of trend where the surfaces are computed correctly and they look correctly, but the characters are stylized. If you look at the latest Pixar movie, the dinosaur movie, right? You have a mix of photorealistic graphics that's very stylized. The trend overall in CG as well as in animation or in other parts are to mix and match, and the engine isn't restricted for that, but really we try to make things believable or relatable, not realistic necessarily. Yeah, we just want to make sense for the brain.
So the follow-up to that is, does a non-photorealistic approach enable you to more easily achieve the frame rate and the results that you need to support good VR?
I wouldn't say non-photorealistic, I would say stylized. Photoreal is a word that, what is photoreal like, really? That what we showed really wasn't photoreal still, by far not, right? So by going stylized, of course, you can shortcut certain demands, but if you really want to make it beautiful and stylized, you're talking still about millions per polygons per object, right, per character. If you want to have CG quality characters come alive on VR, you're talking about 5 to 10 million polygons on a character, so you get smoothness and whatnot, right? And so you're just, I think, deferring the problem to another direction as opposed to really solving a technical problem. Thank you.
I was wondering what advantages does CryEngine have over Unreal for solving...
Ask Tim. There is Tim.
For solving real-life problems. For example, right now we're saving lives with the oil industry in Mexico, with Pemex, and we need something that moves their emotions, because when they just have training with PowerPoint or with manuals, they don't really pay attention. And sometimes there's a critical thing that they need, and they didn't pay attention, and there's an explosion, there's a leak, and people die.
Yeah.
So we're right now using virtual reality and games in order to engage them.
Yeah.
We're using Unity and Unreal, but we're thinking about CryEngine. What advantages would it give us in order to create this content?
So I don't want to necessarily point out where we are different than the others, but what I want to say is that there has been a project about 6 years ago that has used CryEngine in a serious environment for an oil platform for exactly the same purpose that you mentioned out, putting training from a manual to an experience. That was at a screen level, not with VR, not with AR. And literally we have been told through the technology, literally the death ratio has been going down, because of the amount of accidents that happen in the training, because the stable of manual has not been read really. The training wasn't efficient, and people, when there was a leakage or some accident, died, right? And when we engaged with the project and heard that after the engagement, literally we have saved lives, that was one of the biggest gratification for us as technology developers. And the way we apparently saved lives, was simple, by simulating wind. In oil leakage and on certain platforms, these platforms are volumetric and big, right? Very complex tunnels and structures. And so we had simulated the right wind tunneling. And then they put out these flags to show where the wind is blowing which direction. But they only put out the 2 flags typically. So by the simulation, they saw that if they put out more flags throughout the station, they actually can see how the wind changes the dynamics. and can blow against you. Even so, the flag may point to the right. In a tunnel, actually, maybe to you, right? And so, in that simple simple visualization has changed the flag placement at the oil platform and started to save lives, right? So, exactly to your point, I mean, we have done that, and I'm sure other engines can do that too. I wouldn't say they can't do that. We differentiate ourselves, I think, from a very integrated perspective. Like, we have always been integrating physics and AI technology from the ground up into the world. It's part of our engine. Yeah, that's why you can, of course, use different middlewares on top of our engine, but really it's about the highly integrated approach that we always kept on CryEngine as opposed to the other engines. Again, it's a business choice we did from the beginning. Okay. That's it. Thank you very much.